Hi, this is Mark from LongIslandWatch.com, and welcome to another episode of Watch and Learn. For those of you that don't know what this series is, Watch and Learn is a series of videos that I'm doing. They do start all the way back at number 1 and number 30-something today, and I don't see them stopping anytime soon. Talk about all things, generally wristwatches, sometimes go off on a little bit of tangents or so, but all about wristwatches and try to teach people about the wonderful world of wristwatches. Anyway, in the last video, we discussed the accuracy of mechanical timepieces. And in there, we discussed most of your affordable watches, your Seikos, your Orients, watches with Swiss ETA movements in it. And what I want to do today is go over, I guess, the other end of accuracy and precision and talk about chronometers. What is a chronometer? When people hear chronometer, sometimes they think chronograph, and that's not what that is. A chronograph is like a stopwatch. A chronometer is basically a watch, a movement. We'll get into that. It's a movement that's been certified to run within certain parameters, more or less +6 to -4 seconds a day in each of 5 positions and 3 temperatures. So you can be sure that if you buy a new watch that is mechanical and it bears the mark chronometer on the dial or anywhere else in the literature, it will hold that accuracy, for the first probably couple of years until it needs a service. Obviously, as movements get older, they will fall out of regulation, and you'll need to get the movement regulated and or adjusted. But when people want a watch that's got guaranteed accuracy, you have to buy a chronometer. So like I said, a chronometer can only bear the word chronometer on the dial if it's been tested in a independent laboratory, and that's the COSC. There's a couple other places that do it, but really the big one is the COSC, and I won't murder the French. It's an acronym for the institute that does all the testing, and we pretty much come back to our friends at the ISO standards. It's ISO 3159 is what they test all the movements to. So basically, this place in Switzerland, they have 3 main buildings. From what I understand, 2 of them are wholly dedicated to certifying Rolex chronometers. They have 3 buildings, and that's all they do is they certify movements. Now, they certify just the movement. It's not cased in the watch yet. It's only the movement. So imagine you take your watch. This is not a chronometer. You take the movement out, and that's what goes to COSC for validation to meet the criterion. And if it passes, it comes back. It gets a serial number. It's traceable all the way back to the COSC if it's ever necessary. But then the factory that's making the watch takes the movement, cases it up, puts on the dial, the hands, etc., and then sells it to you. So there is a little bit of variability in the process because, in the casing up process, things can happen that make it fall out of tolerance. But for the most part, most chronometers will hold, I'm not wearing any chronometers today, will hold +6 or -4 seconds. And I'll go over all those specs in a second. Now, it is worthy to note that there are Quartz chronometers. They don't just certify mechanical chronometers. They certify Quartz chronometers as well. Far rarer. I believe Breitling has a couple. Quartz chronometers are held to a much tighter standard. Same thing though, temperature and accuracy, and they're allowed to deviate by about 2 seconds a month, which obviously is fantastic. In a year, that's half a minute. That's wonderful. Versus the mechanical brother that's allowed to vary 6 seconds a day. 6 seconds a day is 180 seconds a month. That's 3 minutes a month. That's a half hour a year. It's quite a big difference. But of course, we're dealing with a mechanical system, and we cannot expect the world out of it, but we can expect some really good things. So how many watches out there are chronometers? Well, it's estimated that they do about 1 million movements a year. 1 million. I mean, that's a big number. That's just mostly mechanical movements. The lion's share of those are Rolex, easily more than half. And then you have Breitling, Omega, and the rest of the pack keeping up, certifying movements as well. Now, notably, there are brands that don't subject their watches to COSC certification because in their mind, they're like, well, why should I do that? I make the watch better than COSC standards. And if you're a nobody brand, obviously that argument really stinks. But if you are Patek Philippe, you can do whatever you want, and you put 2 P's on the back of the watch, you engrave it in, and that means it passes your quality standards, and passes the Geneva seal. So like a Patek, does not undergo COSC testing, but it obviously holds much better timing than that. So, it's a little bit of marketing. It's a little bit of, making the user feel better. Could you take, like a 7S26 out of a Seiko and submit it to COSC? Yes, you can. Would it pass? Maybe if you really regulated and adjusted it prior to going, you could get it to pass. But the idea is that movements that are subjected to testing all pass, from the people who send them in. So when Rolex sends in a movement, they know it's going to pass because you have to pay for it. Why pay for it if it's not going to pass? So the movements are generally higher end. It's generally not even ETA 2824s. It's like ETA 2892s. It's higher end movements that go through this certification process because, like I said, the lower end movements could do it, but you'd really have to tweak them and play with them. Whereas on the more expensive movements, they don't have to do anything like that. Pretty much the way they come out of the factory, they are, just need to be maybe a quick regulation, and they are ready to go into testing. So where does the term chronometer come from? Well, the chronometer term that we're using is really based on the marine chronometer. And the marine chronometer came out in the 1700s. There's a book out there, I've mentioned it before. It's called Longitude. It's by Dava Sobel. It's a great book. It's about John Harrison and his quest to create a marine chronometer, and there was a prize at stake to win. And you had to build a chronometer, an accurate time-telling device, that could go on a ship. It went over, obviously, temperature swings. It had to rock back and forth, forwards and backwards, rain, everything else. So it had to be kept in a dry box, and it had to be able to accurately tell the time day in, day out. Now, why is that important for navigation? Well, really simplistically, I could do a whole watch and learn on the topic, and I'm not even a naval person. But for celestial navigation, you can use the stars to figure out what your latitude is. You use star charts and a sextant to figure out what your latitude is. But you cannot figure out what your longitude is. The lines going this way, how far east or west you are from your destination. And a way to do that is to know what your time is where you are. So for that, you can maybe use a sundial, any other device that you might have. But you really need to know the time at your other destination where you sailed from. So let's say it is, it's in London. If you know what time it is in London accurately, and you know what time it is locally on your boat somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic, the difference between those two times will actually tell you where your position is, how far west or east, no, not east, hopefully, how far west you are of your origin, because every hour is about 15 degrees on the globe. The Earth is 360 degrees. We break it into 24 time zones. 360 over 24 is about 15 degrees. So what they would do is set the chronometer when the ship would leave to a standard, whatever time it was in London or whatever time they're going to use. And the chronometer is now independent and it's keeping its own time, and the ship sails. And let's say 2 days later, they can sight the sun, get the time, and then they can look at their chronometer and say, oh, well, back home it's whatever, it's 2 o'clock, and over here it's 12 o'clock. And that's 2 hours past. We are 30 degrees west of where we started. And then latitude, they can get with the stars, and they can actually pinpoint where they are. And it's really cool how that works. And obviously, over the years, navigation through first radio frequencies and then GPS, I mean, that's killer, can tell you where you are with much greater accuracy. But still, every boat, has to have a chronometer, something to tell the time. And probably have to have a sextant too. You got to be able to figure out where you are, because there are times, obviously, when everything goes to pot, all your systems break down. But if you have a mechanical chronometer, it will still work. So what I'd like to do now is we're going to go over to the table, and I have a couple of chronometers, and we'll go over them. I want to talk about the test that it undergoes briefly. It is an ISO spec. I really don't want to show it because it is copyright, and I actually had to purchase it, and I don't know what kind of laws you get in trouble for stuff like that. But I'll talk about the tests and show it to you in detail, and maybe we'll play with a time grapher as well, and we'll take a superlative chronometer. We'll get into what that means in a second, and we'll see how the timing turns out. So in front of you here, I've got 3 chronometers. Believe it or not, the one in the middle is Quartz. I've got my Rolex Submariner from 2006, Yachtmaster from a little more recent, 2016, And in the middle here, flashing away, because I got to change the battery, I just realized, is a Breitling Aerospace. Now, this Aerospace is a certified chronometer. And if you, like I said, Quartz is rare, but Breitling says they do everything. Everything's a chronometer for them. It says Chronometer Aerospace. The back of the watch is engraved that it's a chronometer. And then also, Breitling happens to furnish all their watches with the certificate from the COSC. So here you can see the cert from the COSC that it is a official chronograph movement. Yes, it is quartz. It's got a number stamped in the upper left and the upper right. And basically, this just creates a paper trail. If you as the owner ever want to find out how the watch performed, you could theoretically contact the COSC with the certificate number and find out how your watch did in testing. But from what I understand, Omega does not supply it with their watches. I mean, I have one that's 20 plus years old. I don't recall getting a chronometer certificate with it. My Rolexes certainly did not come with chrono certificates, and they do not supply them. So I guess it's really up to the manufacturer. In the past, we've carried Volmer watches that are certified chronometers, and they have come with a little stamp booklet from the COSC with the serial number and the movement on it and everything that tells you that it was tested. But anyway, so this is a quartz chronometer. This is obviously highly accurate. Like I said, 2 seconds a month, so 24 seconds a year or so. Excellent, excellent. So let's go to Rolex. Now, set aside for a moment that it says superlative chronometer, officially certified. We're really just concerned about that they are chronometers. Rolex does go a step above and beyond the COSC testing, and this is a recent implementation for them. After the movement comes back from COSC, they then case it, and they guarantee that it's plus or minus 2 seconds instead of the +6, -4. That's where they get the superlative chronometer. That's the meaning of superlative chronometer. So it's a cased up movement, not a movement on its own, and it's going to be plus or minus 2 seconds. But for purposes of our conversation, everything we're going to talk about, let's just discuss these like they are normal chronometers. So what is the chronometer test? Well, I'm going to look at the blue watch because I like the blue watch. How do they test them? Well, they are not testing the watch with the case around it. It's just the movement. So take everything out, and they pop a seconds hand on it. They remove the auto winding mechanism. It's not tested with the auto winding mechanism. Wind them, I believe, once a day, and then according to the ISO spec, this is how they are tested. So temperature is normalized at 73 degrees Fahrenheit, 23 degrees centigrade. That's like room temperature. It's like this, which is called the 6H position, which means the 6 hour is up, but I like to just call it crown left because that's what everybody calls it, the crown left position. And it is measured for 2 days, 1 day, 2 day, and at the same time each day, a snapshot of the seconds hand is taken, and they can figure out how fast or slow the watch has been going. Then what they do then is they turn it to the crown up position, keeping the temperature the same. They do it again, 2 days, 3 days, 4 day. Then they go to crown down, position number 3. They do it again for 2 days. Position number 4, dial down, 2 days. Check the timing. Again, we're checking the timing every day. Last position, dial up, 2 days. Now, we haven't touched the temperature. We've gone through 5 positions, 2 days per position. We are at 10 days. Now, it is worthy to note that if you have a complication on the watch, such as a chronograph, the way the spec reads is that auxiliary functions, the functions of which can be interrupted, like a chrono, shall be made to function only on the 10th day. So if they were running a chrono, if this was a chrono, we'd be running the chrono on the 10th day and seeing how it affects timing. Not the 9th day, just the 10th day. So now we're done. We've done all 5 positions, 2 days each. So now the temperature has changed. The temperature is lowered to 8 degrees centigrade or 46 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a decently cold day. It's not frigid, but it is decently cold. It's tested in the dial up position. The temperature, and then again, we measure the accuracy of the watch. Temperature is brought back to room temperature, still maintaining the dial up position for a day. Then the temperature is raised to 38 degrees centigrade or 100 degrees Fahrenheit. We keep it there for a day, and that's a temperature. And then we go all the way back to the beginning. Remember crown left? We do crown left, and we sit there on day 14 and day 15 at 23 degrees centigrade. So all in all, it's 15 days of testing, 5 positions. I can't get my thumb in there. 5 positions, 3 different temperatures. Notably absent from it was what we call crown right, or the 12H position. Now, why is this is also called the 6th position? Why is it not tested? Well, even though this is the position that you see watches displayed on our website, anyone's website, the store, it's always sitting like this with the crown pointing to the right. This is a very unnatural position for a watch to be in during the day. And, just try it yourself. Put your watch on. And to get the watch to look like this to your eyes, you have to look like a fool, kind of. You have to put the watch directly in front of your face and hold it up and look at it. More normally, it's crown left, maybe picking up a cup of coffee. It's dial up at nighttime or dial down perhaps, or, go through the different positions of your arm during the day. And you'll notice that position 6, this position, is not really all that popular. So anyway, we take those 15 days of data and then we distill it down. So the first number that's looked at is the first 10 days. Remember the first 10 days were just done in the 5 different positions without regard for temperature. The temperature was constant at room temp. Well, they take all the variations of all the 10 days, divide it by 10, and that's got to be your +6 to -4. You have to be in that zone to pass. That's just the first test. I know everyone says chronometers are +6, -4, but there's more to it than that. The second test that it goes through is mean variation of rates. So in each position, in each one of those 5 positions, during the first 10 days, again, we haven't touched temperature yet, we take the absolute values of the variation. So if it's negative, it becomes a positive number. Divide those by 5, and that cannot break 2 seconds. So basically, again, now you're not just testing accuracy. +6, -4 is accuracy. Now you're testing precision. Do you get the same repeatable answer every time? Because when watches run in different positions, they run at different rates. So now we're trying to get it to run very close to a nominal rate in every position, and that's your 2-second variation of rates. Then there's the greatest variation of rates. You take the slowest position and the fastest position, and that cannot deviate by more than 5 seconds. So I guess what that means is you couldn't have one position being +6 and the other position being -4, because that would be a 10-second variation, and that would fail that test. Then they average out the rates in vertical positions, horizontal positions. That can fall outside of +8, -6. There's the greatest deviation rates. As they go on and on, I'm going to go faster and faster because it comes more and more technical. I'm just going to read this one verbatim. It's the absolute value of the greatest of the 10 differences between one of the first 10 rates and the mean daily test rate. Again, we're testing now for precision instead of accuracy. We're trying to get the thing to run as best as it can. Then finally, towards the end, we get into temperature. So now we're going to look at how did temperature affect everything. We've looked at positions. Now we have to look at temperature. Remember, temperature is only tested in one position. We didn't go into multiple positions for it. Now we're going to get into temperature. And finally, the final 5 positions we did cold and hot. And what temperature is going to be, they take the deviation at hot, subtract it from the deviation at cold, divide it by the number of degrees that were between them. It was 8 to 38, so that's 30 degrees, and that cannot be greater than 0.6 degrees, 0.6 seconds per degree centigrade. So again, through the temperature swing, the watch has to remain accurate. And then there's resumption of rate, which is just after we recover from being at temperature, how is the watch performing? And that is plus or minus 5 seconds per day. So as you can see, it's more than just +6, -4. It's a whole slew of stuff. Likewise, the Quartz guys have pretty much the same issues. They have all their own tests, but it's more than just what I even say to customers +6, -4. You're getting a lot more than just that. So maybe now I'd like to just I'm going to throw these guys on the time grapher, and we can look at their performance. This is less than a year old, never been serviced. This is 11 years old, never been serviced. But both are or were certified chronometers at one point. I have a feeling this one is going to be way out of regulation. But the amount of times I wear my watches, I wear it and then it's off the wrist for a week, and I reset it when I put it back on. No big deal. But let's see how they perform, and then we're going to bring up one more watch towards the end. So here's the Yachtmaster that's relatively new. It's jumping all over the place, mostly because I'm talking. But while I was quiet for a second, you'll see it did plus 2 seconds a day. I can honestly tell you this watch does not do plus 7 a day. It is extremely accurate. So what I'll do now is I will swap this one over for my 11-year-old Submariner, and we'll see how that's doing. And now you can see it looks like it's starting to settle on around 3 seconds a day in this one position. And again, I hold Rolex to be a little more, their equipment to be a little more accurate than my $100 time grapher, but it definitely gives me a good idea of what's going on. So let's swap out for the Submariner and see how that looks. So here's the Submariner, and you can see definitely increasing in rate, plus 12 seconds a day according to the time grapher. So this watch, even though it was a superlative chronometer at some point in its existence, certainly is in need of a regulation or something. And this is not one of those simple regulations like you saw in one of my videos. This is a free-sprung balance, so it requires, I would say, more of a watchmaker's touch to regulate, since you have to start playing with the screws and the balance. But, I mean, the watch is running really well, nice and straight, but it is definitely running a little bit too fast. Next, I want to flip around to a non-COSC watch that is older than this one, so you can see how that one runs. So here is my non-COSC or non-chronometer Zinn 757 UTC with chronograph. It's running right now without the chrono engaged, but you can see the time grapher, and it is rock solid dead at 0 seconds per day. If you watch it long enough, it'll flip to -1 or +1 a day, but that's it. This watch is, I think it is the best performing watch that I have, better than my Rolex. Better than, I have 3 Rolexes, better than all 3 of those. Really amazing. And like I said, this watch is not a certified chronometer, but you don't necessarily need a certified chronometer to have a watch that functions with supreme accuracy. Like I've said in the other video, there are people that have the SKX 007 and they claim to get 1 or 2 seconds a day, for weeks on end. Anyway, so I thought that was a good way to finish up this conversation with timing the watches. So this has been Mark from LongIslandWatch.com explaining to you what a chronometer is, and then eventually what a superlative chronometer is. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to our channel if you have not done so yet. If you have any questions or comments, please put them down below, and I'll be sure to address them as soon as I can. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.